Unit 2, Lesson 1B. The learning target, I can calculate the slope for a set of coordinates or given points on a coordinate plane by the difference of the y and the x coordinates. The essential question from Lesson 1A was, how can the slope of a line be used to describe the line? Well, we could describe the line as either positive, which is increasing from left to right, negative, decreasing from left to right, zero slope, which is a constant slope and it's a horizontal line, or no slope, which is a vertical line. We have a do now. What is the slope of the linear function graphed? They gave us choices. A is 5, B is negative 5, C is 1/5, and D is negative 1/5. So now if we look at the line, right now we can eliminate two choices. We can eliminate B and C because those are negative. If you look at the line, it's going upward from left to right, so there is a positive slope. Now we're going to use the formula that we learned in lesson 1A, which is, ready? It's M equals rise over run. So I go over and I'm going to start at A and draw my rise and then my run. So I look at my rise, it's 1 up. So I do 1 with an arrow going up. My rise, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right. So now we go over to our formula. Our rise is, I went up 1, so it's positive 1. And my run, I went 5 to the right, and it's 5. So our answer is C, 1/5. It says pick another point on the line and calculate the slope. So the other point I'll pick is over here. See where the line goes in the corner of the box. Put a dot there. Okay, so we go from point B to the red coordinate. So we go up, this is my rise, and then I go to my run. Now we're going to use the formula again. Rise over run. Okay, so my rise, I went up 1, and let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 to the right. So you see, I just found the slope to be the same for every coordinate that you pick. Okay, so now let's go. What are the coordinates of point A and B? Well, A, and it's written as XY. We go to A, and A is -7, 4. So we write -7, comma, 4. And B, we always go XY. We do X first. B is -2, 5. So now the question is, can you use the coordinates to find the slope of a line? Yes, we can use these 2 points because in lesson 1A, we just briefly touched on finding the slope of the line using the coordinates. So this is the formula we have to use now when we have 2 coordinates. M, hold on, I need to put on my pen. Okay, I'm going to write it over here. M equals y, little 2 at the bottom called the subscript, minus y, 1 at the bottom, over x2 minus x1. Now we have our coordinates. So A is the first set. and B is the second set. So before we substitute, we're going to label them. A is x1, y1, x2, y2. We label them so when we substitute, we do not make an error. So now we go. So here y2 is 5. So I put a 5. Minus is part of the formula. You carry it down. And then we have y1 is 4. x2 is negative 2. Minus is part of the formula. And then we write negative 7. I'm going to put it in parentheses because now we have two negatives next to each other. So now we do the math. 5 minus 4 is equal to 1 over negative 2 minus a negative 7. Get used to when you see two negatives together, it makes it a plus. Because a negative times a negative is a positive. And negative 2 plus 7 is positive 5. So we got the same slope. First, we used rise over run. We went up 1 and 5 to the right. And then we used the coordinates. And we used the formula and we substitute. Next slide. The slope of a curve is always changing. It's non-linear in this first picture. You see that it goes high and it comes down and it curves up and then it goes down. It's almost like a roller coaster. That's a non-linear line because it's not a straight line. So if you would like to write that for yourself, not a straight line. A little difficult to write. Okay. It's non-linear. That means it's not a line. The slope of a straight line doesn't change. It either goes positive, we go up, we go down, we have a zero slope, which is a constant, and then we have an undefined slope, which is a vertical line. You could see in the word linear, line, and that's how you know it's a straight line. Again, the slope in the first picture is changing because it goes up and it goes down. It's non-linear. The second picture, you could see there's straight lines. We can go up positive, we could go down negative, we can go on a zero slope, which is a constant slope, and an undefined slope, which is a vertical line. We have slope man. We have a negative slope as his first eye going downward. His second eye is going upward as a plus. We have his nose as a vertical line, which is undefined. And then we have a zero slope. Using the slope formula when given 2 points on the line. To find the slope of a line, you find the ratio of the change in y, which is the vertical change, to the change in x, horizontal change. When they talk about change, it's subtraction. So here's our formula. I would start this. You need to know this. So it says y2 minus y1, change is subtraction, over x2 minus x1, which is subtraction between these sets of points, equals the change in y over the change of x. Be sure to label your points. So we're given these points, 2, 3, and 4, 6. Well, I'm going to look at the graph, and they did rise over run. You could do it doing run and then rise, or you can do it from here. And let me get that. You go rise over run. So here, my rise, I went up 3. See, 1, 2, 3. And then I did my run. 1, 2, and 2 to the right. So if I use rise over run, you get 3 over 2. If you did in the opposite direction, you did your 1 first, you did 2 to the right and 3 up, you just have to be careful that you substitute it correctly into the formula. My rise is 3, my run is 2. Now we're given the points. We're going to show you by using the formula, you should come out with the same slope. So 2, 3, so you could see here's 2, 3. Here's your first set of points. And then 4, 6. Here's your second set of the coordinates x, y. Here's 4, and there's 6. You do x first, and then you do y. So we're going to label. Always label so you don't make an error. x1, y1, x2, y2. So m equals, using the formula on top, y2 is 6. Minus is part of the formula because they want the change. Change is subtraction. And y1 is 3 over x2 is 4 minus x1, which is 2. 6 minus 3 is 3. 4 minus 2 is 2. So as you can see, either using rise over run or using the formula without the graph, you get the same slope. So here we go. A, find the slope of the line graph using rise over run. So I'm going to write that down. M equals okay, as you could tell, looking at the slope of the line, it's going to be negative because it is going downward. It's decreasing from left to right. So up here, I'm going to write to myself, I'm going to have a negative slope. Now your answer should be a negative slope when you do the rise over run. So here we go. We're going to do rise over run. I'm going to change the color of my ink so we can see it better. Okay, so I'm going to count my rise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I went down 10. Now my run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I went 5 to the right. Now I'm going to go to my rise over run. And I saw I went down 10, so it's a negative 10 over my run, which is 5, because I went to the right, so it's a positive 5. This can be reduced to negative 2 over 1, which equals negative 2. My slope matches what I concluded when I read the question and looked at the graph. It's negative because it's going downward from left to right. Now we're going to use the slope of the line graph using the formula y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. First thing, we have to get the coordinates. So let's see what A was. Look at A, and I write it down for myself. And A is negative 5, 4. And B is, you see, 0 is your x, and your y is negative 6. Okay, so now I'm going to label my points, because if you don't, you'll make a mistake when you're substituting. So by labeling, it's less room for error. So this is my first set, so it's x1, this is an x, y1, and then I have x2, y2. I'm going to come down here and to substitute y2, so we have m equals y2 is negative 6 minus, because it's the change, and 4 is y1 over. My x2 is 0 minus because it's the change, the negative 5. So now we have negative 6 minus 4 equals negative 10 over. I see two negatives here. I circle them and I get a plus because a negative times a negative is a plus. And you get 0 plus 5 is 5. And negative 10 divided by 5, we're going to reduce this. It's negative 2 over 1. Or m equals negative 2, as I discussed in lesson 1a. All whole numbers are over 1, so when we are graphing in a future lesson, when you see a whole number, just put it over 1. This means I went down 2 and over 1 to the right. Are the slopes the same? Yes. Now we have find the slope of a line graph using rise over run. Again, I look at my graph and I see from left to right, it's a negative slope because it's going downwards. So I write negative for myself, because that means when I do my rise over run, it has to be negative. So I write rise over run. So now I go to point A and I do my rise and then my run. I'm meeting the other point. So let's see, let's count. My rise, 1, 2. I went down 2. See, I'll run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I went 8 to the right. Now I go to my rise over run. I went down 2, so it's a negative 2. My run is 8 to the right, so it's a positive 8. This can reduce to negative 1 over 4. I said it was going to be negative. My slope is negative. Now we're going to find the slope of the line graph using the slope formula m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. But first we must write our coordinates. A is negative 9, positive 9. And B is, see where B is, it's negative 1, 7. So negative 1, 7. Okay, let's label our lines. Negative 9 is x1, and 9 is y1. That's our first set of coordinate pairs, xy. B is negative 7, I'm sorry, negative 1, so negative 1 is x2, and then I have y2. Now we're going to use the formula. I'm going to come down here, m equals, because there's no room, y2. y2 is 7. 7 minus, because it's the change, 9, which is my y1. Now my x2 is negative 1 minus, and my x1 is negative 9. 7 minus 9 equals negative 2 over, when you see two negatives, we circle it and we turn it into a positive. Let me just change the ink for a second so you can see it better. Let me go over here and show you it became positive. Go back to change. Little technical difficulty with my mouse. Okay. So negative 1 plus 9 gives you 8. And then this reduces to 1 over negative 1 over 4. And as you could see, we have the same slopes. Yes. Now we'll go to the next one. Calculate the slope of the following lines. So now they're giving you the coordinates and they want you to use the slope formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So here we go. First step, label your points. This is x1, y1, x2, y2. So I'm going to write my formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 equals y2 is 1 minus, because you see it's part of the formula, y1 is 1. And then we have x2 is 13 minus, you see it's part of the formula, and it's 4 for x1. So now we say to ourselves, what's 1 minus 1? It's 0. And 13 minus 4 is 9. Well, when you have 0 in the numerator, this is a 0 slope. If you were to pick up your calculator and do 0 divided by 9, you would get 0. So this is a 0 slope. M equals 0. And just write for yourself 0 in the numerator. That's how we get 0 slope. 0 in the numerator, you have a number in your denominator, but if you put in the calculator, 0 divided by 9 is going to give you 0, and we have 0 slope. When we have a 0 slope, if I were to look at this line on the graph, it would be a horizontal line. Now we'll go to the second set. We're going to label it x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm not going to write this formula, but you should. It's at y2 minus y1. So y2, if you can refer up here too, it's negative 8 minus 2 over x2 is 3 minus 2. Negative 8 minus 2 is negative 10. And we have 3 minus 2 is 1. And this is negative 10. This is a negative slope because it's a negative number. Now we're going to go to the fast finishers. I find them to be very good examples, so we're going to use them. So we'll look at the first one. It says 4-3 and 4-10. X1, Y1. I think these should be done as part of your classwork. Again, they're very good examples. X2, Y2. The formula is up here, Y2 minus Y1, X2 minus X1. So Y2 is 10 minus, because it's part of the formula, Y1 is 3 over 4 minus 4. So 10 minus 3 is 7, and 4 minus 4 is 0. If you pick up your calculator and put it in 7 divided by 0, you get syntax error or cannot divide by 0. This is undefined. So the difference is this is 0 in the denominator will give you an undefined. And if you graph it, it's a vertical line. The difference between this one and the one above it, the 0 is in the numerator, so 0 divided by 9 is 0. It's a horizontal line, 0 slope. But this one is undefined because 0 is in the denominator. If you do 7 divided by 0, again in your calculator, it's undefined or syntax error. Undefined, it's a vertical line. Let's go to the next one. Let's label it. I'm going to draw a line down so it doesn't get confused. Here we go. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. So my formula is y2, which is negative 7, minus y1 is a negative 5. Then we have x2 is negative 3 minus a negative 2. I'm going to put it in parentheses because of the two negatives. I want to change my color ink so you could see what happens to the two negatives, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So when you see the two negatives together, make it into a positive. Oh, two negatives together becomes a positive. So, negative 7 plus 5 gives you negative 2 over negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. They're both negatives. So, if I was to graph this, this would be down to 1 to the left. But in reality, a negative over a negative is a positive, so you have a positive slope, which is 2 over 1, and m equals 2. Okay, now we have graph a line with the coordinates a, 5, 4, and b is negative 5, negative 4 on the grid. So let's go, we're going to plot a. You go, this is my x, this is my y. So I go 5 on x, and then I go 4 on y, and I place my coordinate point there, and that is A. Now we go to B, negative 5 on the x. So it's negative 5, and then it's down 4 to negative 4. And this is B. Now we have to find the slope. But before I find the slope, we have to graph the line. So here we go. We'll get the line. So I start here. Okay, so now we'll go back to our pen. Now, when you graph a line, you have to make sure there are arrows on both ends. You extend it a little, and then you put an arrow. And there's an arrow here. Okay, so find the slope of the line graphed using y2 minus y1 and x2 minus x1, which is the slope formula when you have 2 points. So I'm going to label these x1, y1, x2, y2. Substitute. y2 is negative 4. y1, so we're subtracting 4. x2 is negative 5 minus 5. So now we get, so let's see, we did this negative 4 minus 4, and we have negative 5 minus 5. Negative 8, because negative 4 minus 4 is negative 8, over negative 5 minus 5 is negative 10. I see they're both negative, but I look at my line, I know it's a positive line because it's going upward or increasing from left to right. I see 2 negatives. That is because a negative divided by negative gives you a positive. So it's 8 over 10. Now this can be reduced by 2, which is 4 over 5. Now we're going to use rise over run. So here we go. We go up. I'm sorry guys, it's a little hard to write. Now I'll fix this. There we go, guys. So now I'm going to count my rise. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I went up 8. Let's do our run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And 10 to the right. Let's do rise over run. My rise is up 8, positive 8. and my run was 10. So as you could see, we got the same answer. Let me fix this over here so you could see it better. And I'm going to change the ink color a second because it's hard to see. No, not Magic Pen. Let's change it into black a minute. So I'm going to come over here and fix this equal sign. So if we reduce this by 2, we get 4 over 5. And yes, the slopes are the same whether I use rise over run or I use the formula. Let's try another one. Calculate the slope of the following lines. So here we go. The formula is not there, so we should write it for ourselves. So I have to write m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. First thing you do is label your points, x1, y1, x2, y2. So y2 is negative 4 minus 4 over x2 is 5, x1, so we're subtracting the x1 is 3. Negative 4 minus 4 is negative 8. 5 minus 3 is 2. Negative 4 divided by, negative 8 divided by 2 gives you negative 4 over 1, and m equals negative 4. This means I went down 8, 2 to the right. Then it got reduced to down 4, 1 to the right. Here we go. Again, we don't have the formula, so we're going to write it. M equals y2 minus y1 over, we have x2 minus x1. Always label your points. Let me fix this x so you don't get confused. x2 minus, and this is y2. Okay, y2 is negative 2 minus 7 over negative 9 minus a negative 9. Now, we said when we see the two positives close together, they become positive. So, I'm going to make my little circle down here and make it positive. Because a negative times a negative is a positive. Negative 2 minus 7, we're adding those, or subtracting negative 2, taking away 7, gives you negative 9. And negative 9 plus 9 gives you 0. As you saw we did in the fast finisher in the prior slide, if you have 0 in the denominator, it's undefined. So this is an undefined slope. You can pick up your calculator and do negative 9 divided by 0. And on your calculator, you'll get syntax error, or you'll get cannot divide by 0. It's undefined. And if I were to graph this, this would look like a vertical line. If I were to graph the m equals negative 4, it would be a negative line, downward. On your own, here we go. Do these lines graphed have the positive or negative slope? Justify your answer. All right, do these lines have positive, negative slope? If you look at the first line from left to right, it is a positive slope, increasing. Also the second one from left to right, increasing, positive slopes. So we have to write our answer, and we write positive because the lines are increasing from left to right. So we wrote both lines of positive slopes, increasing left to right, upward direction. Now we're going to answer the next part, which says, find the slope of each line graphed using any method. So I'm going to use rise over run. So we'll look at the first line, and we're going to do rise over run. Okay. Okay, so now let's do the counting of the rise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I went 7 up, that's my rise. Let's do the run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So our 10 is the run to the right. So let's do the next one. Do rise over run. Okay, now we're going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 up, 7 rise. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 to the right. Now, let's see, my rise over run on this one, on top. Rise was 7 up, 10 to the right. Let's do the rise over run on this one. My rise was 7 up and 10 to the right. As you could see, they both have the same slope. Their slopes are equal. So now what can we conclude when two lines have the same slope? Well, if you look at them, they're parallel. Parallel lines have equal slopes. Find the slope of the two functions below. Well, we have two sets of points. This is where we use the formula with 2 points with m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's label our points, x1, y1. Always label your points, x2, y2. My y2 is 10 minus y1 is 6. x2 is 1 minus, we have a negative 2. Now I'm going to change my ink to show you when you have the two negatives. The negative and the negative give you a positive. So you change this to a positive. Okay. 10 minus 6 is 4. And 1 plus 2 is 3. So my slope is 4 over 3. It's a positive slope because they're both positive. Now, let's see B. Let's do rise over run. We have a graph. Okay, so I go to my first point, and I want to meet up to my second point. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 4. And so we went 4 up. And my run is 2 to the right. So 4 over 2 gives me a slope of 2 over 1, or just 2. What conclusion can you arrive when you compare the slopes of two lines? Well, this one, example number B, has a steeper slope because the slope is larger than 4 over 3. 4/3 in reality is 1 1/3. That number is smaller than 2, so B is steeper. So you look at the numbers, and the larger slope, whether it's positive or negative, Just look at the number, because if it was a negative slope, that's just telling the direction of the line. 2 is larger than 4 over 3. My exit slip is find the slope of the line passing through the points 3, 2, and negative 1, 8. Okay, so let's label them. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. My formula is Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. My Y2 is negative 8 minus 2, because Y1 is 2, over negative 1 minus 3. Negative 8 minus 2 is negative 10. Negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. I look at my choices, it's not there. That means it's reduced. And when we have a negative over a negative, it becomes positive, because a negative divided by a negative is positive. I could reduce it by 2. So 10 reduced by 2 is 5. 2 divided by 2 is 2. So I have choice C, 5 over 2. Let's look at a summary. We have the summary. We have two ways we can find slope. We could do rise over run. We have the formula when 2 points are given. Rise over run you use on a graph. We have m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. This is when you have 2 coordinates. 2 points are given. Also, we came up when 2 lines have the same slope. The lines are parallel.